Hello? Is that you, Michael? Where are you? We had a final meeting scheduled for tomorrow, right? I was worried because you didn't show up on time. Oh, about that. I'm not going. What? I was at a loss for words at Michael's unexpected reply. What do you mean? I don't understand. That's because I'm not coming to your place. I've decided to call off the wedding. What are you talking about? It's utterly senseless to say something like that the day before the ceremony, isn't it? I've been thinking, and I just don't think it'll work out with you. You're a woman, yet you hold a higher position than me and earn more. I can't marry someone like that and live with regret all my life. Excuse me? I thought he had understood about my job and position, which he knew about for a long time. There were snide remarks, but I thought he understood in his own way. So why bring this up now? That's why I've decided to marry the girl I'm currently dating. I just submitted the marriage license. Marrying? Not with me, but another woman? I couldn't immediately grasp the meaning of Michael's words. Was he dating someone else while with me? Was I being two-timed? Was it that woman's voice on the phone the other day? He's already submitted the marriage license? As I searched for words to reply, perhaps mistaking my shock for something else, Michael continued with a half-smile. I'd rather be with a young, sweet girl who's submissive than a plain, older woman like you. Ditching an old lady like you was the right choice. Hearing those words, all the swirling emotions in my head vanished. Then, my honest response came out. Oh, really? Thanks for breaking up with me. What? My name is Maple, a 40-year-old employee. I've been working at my current company for almost 20 years since graduating from college. The workplace is full of nice people, and I enjoy my job. As a result, I've performed well and now work as the head of the sales department. I found my job in this favorable environment fulfilling, but I had a fiancé. I always thought I'd stay single, but I met Michael through a setup arranged by my parents. I'm an only child, so I understand my parents' anxiety about me staying single forever. With that in mind, I started dating Michael with marriage in mind, and we eventually got engaged. Michael was a salesperson at a company that does business with my father's company. My father and the president of Michael's company are old friends, and they still go out for drinks occasionally. Michael was known as an excellent employee, and my father, on the president's request, set up a meeting between us. Initially, I wasn't keen on the idea. I had a vague desire to marry, but I didn't want to through an arranged meeting. Dad, can you call off this meeting? I'm not seriously thinking of marrying, and it wouldn't be fair to meet with that mindset. Just give it a try, okay? Don't think too hard about it. Just see it as an opportunity to meet someone new. I was gently turning it down, but my father insisted so much that I finally caved in, agreeing to meet just once. Michael, true to his role in sales, was adept at closing the distance. The conversation flowed easily, and time flew by. I thought I wouldn't mind meeting him again. That's how our relationship continued and eventually led to engagement. However, lately, Michael has been acting a bit strange. He's normal most of the time, but when it comes to work, he can be quite harsh towards me. Hey, wanna go out somewhere on our next day off? Maybe take a drive? Michael suggested one evening after work. As I arrived home, I received a call from him inviting me on a date. Sorry, I have to go on a business trip next week. I'll be working through the weekend. Can we do it another day? My job involves a lot of travel, and I often end up working on weekends. While I do get time off in lieu of this, it means that my free days rarely align with Michael's. We often don't see each other for more than a week at a time. Feeling guilty for having to decline his invitation due to my business trip, I noticed a change in Michael's tone when I told him about it. Oh, I see. Being a department head, you're really busy. Guess you don't have time for me, he said, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced by sarcasm. Michael, the same age as me and a manager, seemed to feel inferior to me, though I never minded our difference in positions. I had sensed this, so I usually avoided talking about my work. But now, it was unavoidable. Don't talk like that. I feel bad, but I have work. Of course, your work should come first. Good luck with it, he said, abruptly ending the call. I looked at my dark smartphone screen and sighed. I never intended to neglect Michael because of work. Sure, sometimes our schedules don't match, but we always try to make the most of the days we can spend together. I couldn't understand why Michael wouldn't try to see things from my perspective. Even though we couldn't meet often, we kept in touch through social media. Lately, however, his responses had become infrequent. How about dinner after work this Friday? I found a nice place. One day during lunch break, I sent a message to Michael. Usually, he would read my messages right away, but this time, I didn't get a reply until after 8 p.m. I've got overtime on Friday. Can't make it, he replied curtly. Michael rarely worked late before. I thought it was unusual, but at that time, I figured he must be really busy with work. I was grateful that he managed to reply even amidst his busy schedule. That's how I saw it. But from then on, his attitude began to change significantly. I'm not great at initiating contact. So it was often Michael who used to reach out to me. But now, he hardly ever does. When I send him messages, he sometimes reads them without replying. Or just sends a short response. He's been swamped with work. Working late every day and sometimes on weekends. After this went on for several weeks, I decided to call him. Today is Saturday. Normally, Michael should be off too. I've been calling for a while, but there's no answer. I can't reach the answering machine either, so I kept listening to the persistent ringing. Just when I was about to hang up, Michael answered the phone. What? Michael's voice was noticeably curt. It sounded irritable. Are you okay right now? I haven't seen you for a while, so I thought I'd call. If it's not urgent, can I hang up? I'm swamped with work right now. I felt a bit uneasy as Michael quickly tried to end the call. He said he was working, but the background was noisy, not like an office environment. It's not urgent, but I was wondering since you haven't been replying to my messages. I've told you before, haven't I? I'm busy with work. You, Maple, should understand this feeling, right? I want to focus on my job. Michael let out an obviously loud sigh, seemingly eager to end the call. He was more prickly than usual. Continuing the conversation would probably remain like this. I see. Just take care not to overdo it. Yeah, then. As I was about to end the call, I heard a voice from the other end. Hey Michael, who's on the phone? The voice had a sweetly drawn-out way of speaking. It was a woman's voice. Who? By the time I thought this, the call had ended. Was I mistaken? But I clearly heard her call Michael by his first name. Was Michael really working? My mind was filled with question marks. We continued to lead lives that barely intersected. Honestly, I was beginning to question the point of marrying Michael. Ever since that call the other day, doubts had started to form in my mind. Should I go through with this marriage or call it off? The date for the ceremony is already set. If I'm going to call it off, the sooner the better. Until now, even if Michael got grumpy about work topics, we'd go out together when our days off aligned. It wasn't a bad relationship. But then, the sudden deterioration in our relationship seemed to stem from Michael's increased overtime and working weekends. Avoiding me under the guise of work, could he be cheating? Such suspicions began to arise. The woman's voice on the phone also bothered me. To clear my mind from these feelings, I decided to do what I can at the moment. I made up my mind about that. But Michael's attitude remained the same. We communicated mostly through social media, rarely speaking on the phone. Still, Michael never brought up canceling the wedding. Considering we had invited relatives and other stakeholders, I couldn't just stop preparing for the ceremony. It was unthinkable that Michael, always busy with work, was handling the preparations alone. Just in case, I contacted the venue, but as I suspected, Michael hadn't been in touch with the staff. I was the one advancing the preparations for our wedding alone. And now, the day before the wedding. I had spent a lot of time preparing for tomorrow. Today, Michael was supposed to come to my house for a final meeting. I really had to talk to him in person today. However, he didn't show up even after the scheduled time. Wondering what happened, I called him, and it sounded like he was outside. Hello? Michael? Where are you? We're supposed to have our final meeting for tomorrow's ceremony. I was worried because you didn't show up on time. Oh, that. I'm not gonna go. What? I was at a loss for words at Michael's unexpected reply. What do you mean? I don't understand. That's what I'm saying. I'm not coming to your place. I've decided to call off the wedding. What are you talking about? Canceling the day before the ceremony, isn't that extremely unreasonable? I was confused. Honestly, I hadn't been looking forward to it with all my heart. But if we canceled the day before, it would inconvenience so many people. I would have to notify the venue, inform relatives and guests about the cancellation. More than the sadness or shock of not being able to marry Michael, I was preoccupied with what I needed to do next. Ignoring my silence, Michael continued to speak. I've been thinking about it, and I just can't see us working out. You, a woman, holding a higher position and earning more than me. I can't spend my life feeling inferior being married to someone like that. Excuse me? He had known about my job and position for a long time. There were snide remarks, but I thought Michael had come to understand. But what is this sudden change of heart? That's why I've decided to marry the girl I'm with now. I just filed our marriage license. Marry? Not with me, but another woman? I couldn't immediately grasp the meaning of Michael's words. Was he seeing another woman while with me? Was I being two-timed? The woman from the phone call before, was she the one? They've already filed the marriage license? As I searched for words, Michael, mistaking my shock for distress, continued with a half-laugh. A girl who's young and sweetly dependent is way better than an older, charmless woman like you. Dumping an old hag like you is the right choice. Hearing those words, all the swirling emotions in my head just disappeared. And then my honest reaction came out. Oh, is that so? Thanks for breaking up with me. Eh? Michael, who had assumed I would be upset, seemed surprised by my unexpected response. Honestly, I've been wondering whether it was right to marry you. Thanks to your unreasonable behavior, now I can retaliate without holding back. Thank you. What? Wait, Maple, what do you mean? Michael, who had betrayed me first, seemed confused. Did he expect me to be crying and begging? I had no feelings left for Michael as a fiancé. We're now complete strangers. Don't ever call me again. Goodbye. Michael seemed to be saying something on the other end, but I mercilessly hung up the phone. Perhaps it's better this happened than to marry with doubts. However, canceling the wedding means a lot of follow-up work. Thinking about it, I can't rest until I get back at Michael. I decided to seek revenge on Michael. About a week after the wedding was called off, Michael called. He sounded frantic. Hey! What the heck is going on? He yelled as soon as I picked up. You don't need to yell, I can hear you. What do you want? I told you not to call me again. That's not important right now. There's a huge mess at my work. You did something, didn't you? A mess? What exactly? When I pressed for details, Michael stumbled over his words. I imagined him now, surely looking frustrated. At work, rumors are spreading that I was two-timing. Only someone like you would do this. Is this your way of getting back at me? How vindictive. It's not a rumor, it's the truth. And since we invited colleagues from both our workplaces to the wedding, it's natural they'd be curious why it was suddenly called off. So, maybe. But, I even got called in by the president today. He seemed desperate to paint me as the villain. Michael was trying hard to find reasons to blame me. But regarding the broken engagement, Michael is clearly at fault. I responded firmly. Of course. My father must have talked about it. What do you mean? Why would your father be involved? Actually, my father is the president of his company. He knows Michael's company's president personally, and they even interact privately. So, it was natural for my father to talk to the president when his daughter's wedding got cancelled due to Michael's selfish reasons. I conveyed this fact calmly to Michael. What? Your father is the president of that major company? They're one of our biggest clients. Didn't I tell you? Originally, my father planned to let my husband take over the company. He wanted me to marry someone capable. But no matter how professionally competent, if someone's character is trash, it's pointless. My father dotes on me, but in a way, he's old-fashioned, thinking of handing over the business to a son-in-law rather than his daughter. Knowing my father's feelings, I convinced myself to marry Michael, but now it seems like a ridiculous idea. So, if I had married you, I could have been the next president of that company. That's impossible now. No, it's not impossible. After a pause, Michael suddenly blurted out an astonishing proposition. Mabel, marry me. Excuse me? I'll divorce my current wife. Let's get married. His absurd offer made me laugh dryly. Are you out of your mind? Why would I marry a man who easily switches women? Think about it. We were once considering marriage. We can make it work. Michael tried to appease me with a softer tone. I won't be fooled. I decided to play my final trump card. Emily, was it? So now you're going to dump a young and cute girl for an older woman for money? At the mention of Emily, Michael fell silent. He must be scrambling to figure out how I knew her name. What are you talking about? Who's Emily? You must be mistaken. Did you think I wouldn't know? When you suddenly started working late and weekends, avoiding me blatantly, it's obvious to suspect something. Michael fell silent again. He must be trying to concoct an excuse. Not giving him the time to do so, I continued. The woman you were cheating with, Emily, she's a new employee at your company, right? I heard there were rumors about you two being close at work. I hired a detective to thoroughly investigate it. A detective? You did something so underhanded. Michael's tone drastically changed from trying to appease me to outrage. You were the one who betrayed me first. Don't get angry now. But, doing things secretly behind my back. No, this must be your way of showing love, right? You did this because you were worried, didn't you? Michael was muttering to himself, trying to convince himself of his own twisted logic. You wanted to be with me, so you investigated me. I'm sorry for getting mad. I won't do anything to worry you anymore, let's get married. I felt almost terrified at how Michael twisted the facts to suit himself. The thought of spending a lifetime with such a person was nothing short of a nightmare. Enough already. I can't marry someone who only thinks about money. Too bad you missed your chance to marry into wealth. I was completely fed up with Michael's self-centeredness. The way he could manipulate things for his own benefit was almost a talent in its own right. I don't want to talk to someone who only makes me feel uncomfortable. I've told you before, don't call me again. I cut off the call with a firm attitude. Then I blocked all of Michael's contact information. Keeping his contact would only lead to more situations like today. I no longer wanted any involvement with Michael. One day, my father called me, and I decided to visit my parents' home. I have a good relationship with my parents, but due to my busy work schedule, I hadn't been able to visit home much. When I arrived, my father apologized to me. Maple, I'm sorry. It's my fault that you got hurt. I apologize. It seemed my father thought I was shocked about being dumped by Michael. I decided to be honest about my feelings. Dad, don't apologize. Honestly, I'm not sad that I didn't marry Michael. What do you mean? Dad looked up and stared straight into my eyes. I looked back at him and shared my feelings. I've always thought that maybe it's okay to stay single. But knowing you wanted a son-in-law to take over the family business, I thought marrying Michael would fulfill your dream. Maple. But, with such a mindset, even if I had married, it wouldn't have lasted long. I should have been honest about my feelings. I'm sorry. I apologized to my father. He wrapped his arm around my shoulder. No, you did nothing wrong. It's my fault for starting all this. And the ones who should be punished are Michael and his affair partner. My father's voice grew firmer. His brows furrowed, his expression filled with anger. There's a satisfying story I have. Want to hear it? A satisfying story? Yes. A story where the bad guys get their comeuppance. According to my father, Michael and his affair partner, Emily, were facing a tough time at their company. It started when my father told Michael's company's president he would cancel their business deal. My father couldn't trust a person who cheated while engaged and unilaterally broke off the engagement the day before the wedding. He didn't want to do business with a company that employed such a person. That's what he said. The president begged for a reconsideration, but my father was clear: as long as Michael was there, he had no intention of continuing the business. Being acquaintances with the president for many years, I didn't want to end things over this. Dad sighed softly. But it didn't end there. Dad continued the story. The day after talking to the president, my father was called in to discuss further. He was told about Michael's misdeeds. Michael was well regarded for his sales performance at the company. However, it turned out he had been taking credit for his subordinates' and colleagues' work. His rise to the position of manager wasn't due to his own abilities. Maybe he felt inferior to me because he knew he lacked true ability. I found him rather pitiful. At Michael's company, rumors of his affair with Emily had spread. On top of that, a major business deal was at risk because of Michael. His subordinates and colleagues, tired of tolerating such a fallen man, brought evidence to the president. It seems the president was prepared to fire Michael because of this. Michael was fired, and his affair partner was demoted with a pay cut to a less significant department, so the president asked to restart the business with us. I agreed since that was the case. My father said with a smile. It became such a big deal. I'm sorry. I've caused so much trouble for you and the president. It's okay for me. But I felt concerned about causing trouble due to my personal affairs. I apologized later, and he said he was glad to get rid of the trouble, which relieved me a bit. I told my father I wanted to thank the president again. Regardless of the circumstances, I had caused trouble due to my relationship with Michael. I felt sorry for the president, but at the same time, I was relieved that Michael and Emily faced such fitting retribution. After splitting with Michael, I moved out of the house I had been living in. It was to avoid Michael coming around, and that decision turned out to be correct when an incident occurred. Michael had been waiting for me outside my workplace, timing it with my office's closing hour. Honestly, I didn't even want to see his face, but if Michael caused any problems, at least there were people from my office around for safety. I tried to ignore him and head home, but Michael tried to grab my arm. Maple, I've been looking for you. I need to talk to you. I quickly dodged his hand and reluctantly faced him. He looked a bit haggard. And his complexion wasn't good. What do you want, coming to my workplace like this? It's a nuisance. I went to your house, but you've moved, right? You didn't tell me where, so I had to come to your workplace. Why would I tell a stranger where I've moved to? I need to talk to you. There's nothing to talk about. Please go home. As I tried to ignore Michael and leave, he moved in front of me and suddenly started shouting. Please, I'm begging you, help me. His action, devoid of any pride, left me stunned. It was a busy area in front of my workplace, with many people passing by. I couldn't believe Michael would do something like this in public, so unlike him. Stop it, what if someone sees us? I won't stop until you agree to talk to me. Fine. I'll listen, but that's it. Hearing my words, Michael finally stood up. Actually, I need a favor. He began to speak hesitantly, looking down. My company is demanding I pay compensation because the deal with your father's company was cancelled. It was a significant deal, so the amount is huge. That's why I need your help. I recalled my father saying the business had resumed, but perhaps there was more damage beyond my father's company. Regardless, I had no obligation to help him. How dare you ask me for help? It's all your own doing. How could you even think to ask me? Because you are a manager, so you earn well, and even if you don't have enough, your father is a wealthy president, right? I thought you, as my former fiancé, would want to help. He must be desperate, trying to find any way to get the money. But his unwillingness to struggle and work hard was typical of Michael. Always looking for the easy way out. Never considering others, just self-centered thinking. I decided it was time to give him a final push away. What are you even talking about? As if I'd lend you anything. In fact, I'm going to claim damages for the broken engagement. Be prepared. What? You're asking for more money from someone who just said they're in financial trouble? Don't you have any humanity? Michael, who had naively thought a display of desperation might win my sympathy, now openly expressed his anger upon being refused help and further learning I intended to claim damages. It's only fair to be charged for damages after you unilaterally broke off our engagement for selfish reasons. Plus, I had to cover the cancellation fees for the wedding. I'll be claiming that from you too. You're a demon. How can you not want to help someone in this weak state? I have no feelings of sympathy or pity for you. And stop calling me Maple in such a familiar way, it's disgusting. Despite being married to Emily, Michael still treated me as if I belonged to him, which disgusted me. Despite my desire to cut off all ties, I wonder why he continues to make me feel so uncomfortable. But you are the only one I can rely on. Help me, this is the last time I'm asking. No matter what you say, it's impossible. I don't have a penny to waste on you. If you keep bothering me, I'll call the police. Leave now if you don't want that. Realizing that I was adamant and wouldn't yield, Michael, with a look of despair on his face, slowly walked away from me. This should sever any remaining ties with him. Watching Michael's downfall didn't stir any emotions in me. It confirmed that I had completely moved on from him. I was determined to look forward. My father mentioned that Michael and Emily had to take out loans to pay the compensation demanded by their company. They borrowed from unsavory sources and were struggling with aggressive collection efforts. They tried to rely on family and relatives to repay the debt, but no one was willing to help after learning about the circumstances of our broken engagement. Michael was fired from his company and struggled to find re-employment, as rumors about him taking credit for others' work had spread, making it difficult for him to get hired in nearby companies. On the other hand, Emily, although she was moved to a different department and avoided being fired, found her workplace unbearable due to persistent rumors about her affair and apparently chose to resign voluntarily. Both of them are now reportedly living day-to-day, juggling part-time jobs. As for me, I continued to excel in my job. It seemed I was more suited to this kind of life. One day, while relaxing at home, my father approached me. Maple, would you consider taking over my company? What? Not immediately, of course. But if you're interested, I'd like to train you as my successor. It seemed my father had reevaluated his thoughts. Rather than forcing me into marriage for succession, he now considered me as his successor. For me, who had been determined to dedicate myself to my career, my father's words felt like a recognition of my efforts at work, and I was genuinely pleased. Thank you. I feel suited for work. I don't know much about running a company, but I'd like to take on the challenge. My father smiled warmly at my response. I'm glad to hear that. There's no rush, so keep doing your best at your current job. Encouraged by his words, I felt determined to someday take over my father's legacy. This property is amazing. It's worth $1.5 million. Wait, there's no way we can afford a place like this. But didn't you say your dad would help with the down payment? If that's the case, there shouldn't be a problem. Even so, this is just too expensive. There's a limit, you know. While discussing a new home with my husband, he suggested an ultra-luxurious property costing over $1.5 million. My father had agreed to help with the down payment, but how much was he expecting to burden him with? I was appalled at the audacity my husband showed after marriage. Somehow, we managed to decide on a property to view. The place was more fantastic than its price, captivating both my husband and me. This place has a large garden, perfect for enjoying barbecues outside. Wow, that's incredible. I'll go check out the garden. Then I'll. Wait, it's this way. The moment my husband stepped out to the garden, I was pulled into another room by the real estate agent. As soon as we entered, the agent closed the door with a bang and immediately locked it. Confused and scared, with my husband outside, I began to tremble with fear. I'm sorry for being so rude. But there's something I need to tell you. Your husband, you should run away from him right now. His unexpected statement left me speechless. But the shocking truth he revealed next made my face turn pale. At the same time, I vowed to divorce such a husband. My name is Juliana. Currently, I'm living with my boyfriend of 1 year. We've been dating with marriage in mind, maintaining a great relationship even after a year, known as a perfect couple among our friends. We're both over 28 and not yet married, but it feels like we're counting down to it. I'm going out for drinks with friends, might not be back until morning, but that's okay, right? Staying out till morning? I'll try to come back early, but if we get carried away, I might end up drinking all night. Once we're married, I can't do this, so let me have my last hurrah, okay? Alright, but don't drink too much and get wasted. I said this with a smile, sending him off. I really didn't want him to stay out all night and wished he'd come home on time. But his words gave me the impression that we were close to marriage, and I couldn't argue with that. I think the idea that we might get married soon made me more tolerant of his actions. Still, lately, his frequent nights out have increased, and my dissatisfaction is not completely zero. Hey, I might get a rare day off soon. How about we go out this coming Monday? Sorry. I have work. But you always finish on time, and we can go after that. I often work late, so it's okay. I have plans to drink with friends after work, really sorry. There's still a week until next Monday, and he already has plans for a drinking party. It felt a bit unnatural, and I was concerned that he wasn't making much time for me recently. If I suggest going somewhere on the weekend, he always has some excuse to decline. If he's free, he's either too tired and wants to rest or not feeling well. Of course, I was happy that he showed the intention to marry me, and I understood his desire to have fun before marriage. So, I was trying to be accommodating. But that doesn't mean I want to silently accept being neglected like this. But, you haven't been making time for me recently. Can't we do something? I promised to drink with high school friends I haven't seen in a long time, and everyone's coming to New York. So, next time, okay? Well, when he puts it like that, I can't really say no. I knew I was being swayed by his persuasive words, but I had this fear that if I pushed too hard, I might upset him and jeopardize our marriage plans, so I didn't say much. I generally kept my emotions to myself, and even if I felt a little upset, I never became emotional. Being over 28, I think I was in a rush to get married. In hindsight, I should have been more discerning about my partner. Many of my friends were getting married, and I was fixated on the idea of marriage due to my age. By the way, what about us getting married? I want to live in a big new house after we get married, but we don't have much money yet. About that, if we decide to get married, my dad said he'd help with the down payment for a new house. So, we don't have to worry about money. Really? Then, I want to get married soon too. Seems like a good timing, right? Really? I'm so happy. Although it wasn't a romantic proposal, if it even counted as a proposal, we decided to get married. For me, the fact of getting married was more important than the words of the proposal. I was just happy that we were going to get married. Finally. I was going to get married. I was relieved not to be left on the shelf. Of course, I loved him, so I was happy about marrying him, but I also felt a sense of security in acquiring the status of a married woman. So, I brought some brochures for new homes. How about this one? If we're getting a substantial down payment, we should buy a nice house. These are all over $1 million. Isn't that a bit too expensive? But your dad's putting down a significant amount, right? And your dad's a corporate executive, he's loaded. He'll splurge for our wedding gift, so this amount should be fine. Since we decided to get married, we immediately started looking for a new home. But it was around this time that his personality started to change. Or rather, he started showing his true colors. Once I told him about my father's offer to help with the down payment, he began bringing up only ultra-luxurious properties. Of course, I understand wanting a big house considering our future children. We both were working, so we could manage a substantial payment. But isn't it a bit presumptuous? It's too audacious to ask my father for this much. I think we can afford it, but it's not about the money. It's just too much to ask of my father. Wait a minute. Are you saying your dad is more important than me? He doesn't spend much and has saved up a lot. We'll eventually inherit it all when he passes away, so it's better if he uses it now. He wasn't wrong. My dad isn't the type to splurge, and he does have substantial savings. If I don't use this and pass away, as the only daughter, I would inherit everything, but that's not the point. But it's incredibly disrespectful to my still healthy and active father and just too presumptuous. He wasn't like this before we got married. What happened to him? It's like he married me for my father's money. You didn't want to marry me, but my dad's money, right? That's not true. Don't get me wrong. We might have kids in the future, and we'll need space for your parents' care. That's why I want a decent house. Right. Don't worry, it's not about the money. Indeed, his points made sense. If we need space for future children or my parents' care, a bigger house is better. I should first consult my father, it's his money, after all. It's not right for me to decide everything. After hearing his opinion, we can move forward with specific plans. That's what I thought as I decided to contact my father. So, we're looking at some expensive properties. What do you think? You don't have to worry about us, but if you think about future children, living in a spacious house might be better. And if it makes my darling daughter happy, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. My father said this with a smile. Truly wealthy people don't even flinch at such things. Maybe I was worrying too much. Maybe it's okay to go for an expensive house. Seeing my father so relaxed made me think that, but I still felt it was too much to ask of him. However, it seemed my husband got carried away with my father's words and started bringing even more luxurious properties. This property is amazing. It's worth $1.5 million. Wait, we can't afford a place like that. But didn't you say your dad would help with any amount for the down payment? If that's the case, there's no problem. Even so, this is just too expensive. There's a limit, you know. Realizing there was no stopping him, I picked a few properties that I liked and decided to view them immediately. House viewings aren't usually this rushed, but if I left my husband to his devices, he would surely keep bringing higher-priced properties. Moreover, since we got married, he's become really greedy about money, and I couldn't control it alone. Not just that, his emotional state had become unstable recently, and any slight criticism would come back tenfold. So, I really wanted to find a property we both liked quickly. All right, we'll go for a viewing tomorrow at 10 a.m. Don't forget, okay? All right. I'm heading out for a bit. Going out now? Where are you going? It's early tomorrow. Just for a drink. A friend invited me. Going out for drinks now, it's already past 10 p.m. We need to leave the house by 8:30 a.m. tomorrow for the viewing. Meaning we have to get up around 7 a.m. And he's going out for drinks now? He'll probably come back late at night, and I wonder if he'll even wake up on time tomorrow. But if I say anything more, he'll just snap at me. Knowing that, I had no choice but to see him off. Really, he lacks common sense as an adult. He wasn't like this when we were dating. Was marrying him a mistake? I've been thinking that more and more recently. Please, wake up. It's time. We'll be late if you don't hurry. The next day, as expected, he wouldn't wake up no matter how many times I tried. When he finally did, he was in a foul mood. I don't know what time he came back last night, but he still smells of alcohol. He can't drive in this state. I don't have a license, so we have to take the train. This throws off all our plans. The worst start to our day of viewings. Wow, this is incredibly beautiful. As expected of a luxury home, it's on another level. My husband and I were both in a foul mood up until we got here, hardly exchanging any words. But once we stood in front of the property, all that grumpiness just vanished. It was considerably larger than it looked in the photos, and above all, it exuded luxury. We had only seen the exterior, but it seemed like a really good property. I felt that deep down. The real estate agent was already waiting for us, but they've been rather curt since a while ago. It was such a great property, yet. I wondered if this is how high-end real estate agents act. But there was no point in complaining to the agent. We decided to go inside for a viewing, thinking that if we liked this house, we would settle on it. This comes with a large garden where you can enjoy things like barbecues. Wow, that's amazing. I'm gonna go check out the garden too. Then I'll. Wait, this way. As soon as my husband stepped out into the garden, the real estate agent pulled me by the arm into another room. As soon as we entered, they slammed the door shut and immediately locked it. Wait a minute, what's going on? It's unbelievable to do this when I came to see the house with my husband. But the fact that they brought me to this separated room and even locked the door. As I realized this, a wave of fear surged through me, and I started to tremble. I was so scared I felt like crying, but the agent put their index finger to his lips, gesturing for me to be quiet. Even though I was too terrified to speak. I'm sorry for being so rude. However, I need to tell you something. Your husband, you need to run away from him now. Run away? What is this person talking about? Could this be some new kind of pickup line? Regardless, my fear only grew. Although I had calmed down a bit, I considered calling out loudly for my husband's help. But before I could do anything, the agent continued. Actually, I have a friend who runs a bar in the Las Vegas Strip. I introduced them to this real estate, and that's how we're connected. But recently, they came to me with a problem. It's about illegal drug trafficking. There are people using my friend's bar as a place for these transactions. We caught someone yesterday, and it was your husband. I was so shocked, I had to ask again. My husband dealing in illegal drugs? That's impossible. It just can't be. He has a normal job, he's not the type to get involved in crime. But I couldn't deny that there were some signs. Ever since we decided to get married, he's become excessively greedy about money. Lately, he's always been restless, and suddenly, he started carrying 2 cell phones, one for work and one for personal use. Even yesterday, he went out for a drink all of a sudden, even though he was ready to go to bed. Could it actually be true? It's a coincidence, but I can't just ignore it. It would be a huge loss for me if my property were used for a crime. That's why I always keep an eye out. My friend caught him yesterday, and we have evidence. After saying that, the agent opened the door, leading me back to the living room. Just then, my husband entered the house from the garden. Where have you been? I was just explaining the system kitchen to her. It's an important element for the lady of the house. Aha, I see. Do you like this property? Yeah. I think it's a great place. My husband was happily chatting with the real estate agent. But could this really be the demeanor of someone whose crime was exposed just yesterday? He seemed in high spirits, not looking down or scared at all. But I couldn't believe the real estate agent was lying. For now, we decided to go back home, and then I immediately contacted the agent. Hello. I'm waiting at the cafe near the station, see you there. That evening, I told my husband I was going shopping and met up with the agent. Maybe the agent was lying. But my husband's recent behavior had been really odd, and it wouldn't be surprising if the agent's story was true. Did you bring the evidence? I haven't shown it to the police, but if you want to take it to them, go ahead. We just don't want an arrest happening on our property. Then, the agent showed me several photos as evidence. My husband had really been involved in a crime. I didn't understand why. Was it for money, or was he involved himself? But I couldn't stay with a criminal, and I would never forgive him. I took the evidence and went straight to my husband. Oh, you're back. It's late, I'm hungry, huh? Hungry. Well, enjoy your last meal in the free world. Wait, why are the police here? I was scared of what he might do if I told him I wanted a divorce and was going to the police. He had become more aggressive lately, and I felt genuine fear. So I submitted photographic evidence to the police and went home with them. Seeing the police, my husband was shocked and trembling, but he couldn't run anymore. I can't believe you were committing crimes. That's despicable. And to think, you were going to make my dad pay the down payment for that fancy house. You're finished as a person. What's going on? Explain this to me. What do you need explained? You see the truth right in front of you. You were selling that weird stuff, weren't you? He was silent, but seeing the police and hearing my testimony, he must have realized there was no escape. As he became almost hyperventilating, his eyes wide open, he charged at us. I was frozen, but the police who were standing by quickly subdued him. Hey, let me go, hey! You're under arrest for the current offense. Even if I wasn't physically hurt, the crime was established the moment he tried to harm me. Plus, he had grabbed a rod-like object from a shelf and was swinging it around. There was no excuse for not having violent intentions. To think I was living with someone like you, it's truly the worst. Just disappear from my sight right now. You're gonna pay for this. I'll make sure you regret it. Was that a threat to me? He was oblivious that if he continued with this abusive language, he'd only be adding to his crimes. Ignorance is indeed frightening. But then again, someone who knowingly commits a crime probably doesn't think straight. After that, my husband was taken away by the police, and I just collapsed in relief. I was really scared. When he glared and charged at me, I didn't know what would happen. I'm so glad I had the police with me. I immediately called my parents, and they came over to the house. Are you okay? I am fine, but I was so shocked. I never imagined he would. It's good that you're unharmed. My parents were genuinely concerned for me, and I realized how lucky I was to have come out of this dangerous situation unscathed. But I had no idea. I never thought he would do something so terrible. He won't be in prison forever. Let's talk with his parents first. There's the divorce and future arrangements. We need to have a discussion. True, under American law, getting caught with drugs doesn't mean decades in prison. He might hold a grudge against me. If that's the case, I'd be too scared to live. I wasn't sure how his parents would react, but I had my parents with me, so I felt safe. We decided to have a talk. So, that's the situation. I'm so sorry. Our foolish son. How can we ever apologize? Please accept our apologies. No amount of sorry can erase the crime, but please, take this as our apology. I braced myself for their resentment, but his parents apologized to me. Of course, it wasn't their fault, and they didn't need to apologize this much. I hadn't been physically harmed, after all. But seeing his parents so earnestly apologizing, I couldn't help but wonder how such decent people ended up with a son like that. Please, lift your heads. You don't need to apologize. We're here to discuss what's next. We'll ensure he never comes near you again, even after he's out of prison. I promise you that. And it's not much, but could you accept this? They said, almost crying for the sorrow, and pulling an envelope from their bag. It was thick, likely containing about $100,000.
Wait a minute. What's this about? I can't accept such a large amount of money.
We know it's not much, but consider it compensation. What he did brought you a lot of trouble. Please accept it as a token of our feelings.
But
I didn't want to dismiss their gesture, but it felt wrong for his parents to take all the responsibility. He's going to prison to pay for his crimes. The trouble he caused me is a separate matter. As I thought about this, thank you for your kindness. However, as adults in society, we should take responsibility for our actions. If this money is to be my daughter's, please promise that you will let him pay back the entire amount to you after his release. Of course, we won't be lenient with him, and will make sure he's properly rehabilitated. I appreciate hearing that. We're truly, truly sorry. His parents, my former in-laws, apologized right until the end. It's so unfortunate that such good parents ended up with a son like that. However, they assured me they would handle the situation, so I decided to leave everything to them. I later heard he was sentenced to about 4 years in prison, as the drugs he dealt were considered less severe. I was cautious after hearing about his release, but fortunately, nothing happened. It seems we're now leading separate lives. Then unexpectedly, I got a call from his parents. You don't need to apologize anymore. But we think it's important to make amends. If you really don't want to meet, we'll understand. All right. I had almost forgotten about him in those 4 years and had started a new life. But his parents wanted him to personally apologize to me. I agreed, thinking it was a way of setting things right. I didn't want him to know my current address, so we met at his parents' house. It's been a long time. I'm truly, truly sorry. He had lost weight and aged about 10 years in those 4 years. Life in prison must have been hard, but he brought it upon himself. Seeing him kneeling without hesitation, I could tell he had changed or at least reflected on his actions. But that doesn't change anything for me. I have my own life, and there's no way I'd reach out to him again. Now, you need to pay back your parents and atone for what you've done. When I said this, he just nodded, looking downcast. I haven't been in touch with him since, and I don't know what he's doing now. But I still talk to his parents regularly. They told me he's now working at a construction company and is being very diligent. His salary is managed by his parents. Whether he's truly repentant or not, I'll have to wait and see. But for now, he seems focused on working to repay his debt, without wasting money on himself. He might fall back into his old ways. But if he does, his parents will probably cut ties with him. It's up to him now. I'll just let him be.
all right, everyone's ready. Let's go. Yeah.
By the way, I've since remarried and now live happily with my husband. My parents like him too. We often travel as a family, and I'm building a happy home with my second husband. Of course, there might be big problems ahead. But as long as my husband doesn't betray me, I'll support him no matter what. Once you betray someone's trust, it's hard to regain it. Relationships seem simple, but they're more complicated than you'd think. My ex-husband must have learned this the hard way. I just hope to live a life I can be proud of, always considering those around me, and not end up like him. My name is Sarah Johnson. It's been a year since I got married, and while my husband and I do have our arguments, I believe we've been generally happy. We were fortunate to have a child, and I managed to give birth safely. When my husband learned of the birth, he hurried over and gazed at our baby, saying, "So, it's finally born. Kind of looks like a monkey, doesn't it?" That was his first reaction upon seeing our child.
Hey! That's a terrible thing to say.
What? Oh, yeah, I guess so. He replied, laughing. But it's not something you can just laugh off when someone says that about your child.
What a terrible dad.
Sorry, don't be mad. I'll work even harder now for our child. So, when are you getting discharged? In about 5 days. After discharge, I'm planning to rest at my parents' house for about a month. Got it. I'll work harder too, for the baby's sake. I might come home late from now on, but it's all for work, so bear with me. My husband seemed quite motivated by the birth of our child. Seeing him like that, I felt that everything would work out fine. I thought so. But, despite saying he had work, he never visited the baby even once before I was discharged.
He must be really busy. It's tough handling everything alone.
I thought, naively. I recovered well and was discharged earlier than planned. Thinking to surprise my husband, I returned home with our baby. But upon opening the door, I saw a pair of women's shoes I didn't recognize. And it was the middle of the day. A guest? But isn't he supposed to be busy with work? It was odd for a woman to visit a man living alone. Unless perhaps she was a sales agent or something. But then I heard my husband's and a woman's voices from inside. Listening closer, their conversation didn't seem work-related. "Hey, your wife might come back," said the woman. "Don't worry, she's still in the hospital. Even after discharge, she's going straight to her parents." "No need to worry," he assured her.
That's a relief. But how awful of you. Your wife just went through the pain of childbirth, and here you are, bringing another woman home for a good time. That's because it's you, Susan. I'm not interested in other women. But you used to sweet-talk her the same way. I've never felt this way about her. I truly love you, Susan. So, how about heading to bed? No way. It's still daytime. Wait until tonight. I know how a dog feels waiting for a treat.
They both laughed. This was definitely cheating. What a situation. Here I was, having endured childbirth, while my husband was entertaining another woman at home. Moreover, since the birth, he hadn't once come to see the baby. He'd ignore my calls and texts, and when he finally read them, his cold reply was, "You know I'm busy, so don't contact me." I'd been patient, thinking he was working hard for the family and considering our child. Quietly, I left the house with my baby and returned to my parents. Tears streamed down my face on the way. I couldn't cry in front of my parents, knowing how much it would hurt them. So, for now, just for now, I allowed myself to cry as much as I needed. So, just for now. Just for this moment, I'm going to cry my heart out. I parked the car and looked out over the river, letting my tears flow unchecked, turning my anger towards my husband into tears.
When did it all start?
I wondered. More questions bubbled up, and I realized how much I didn't understand. Where had they met, and how did it come to this? Who was this woman? How long had I been deceived? While I was struggling with childbirth, my husband was betraying me, having a good time with another woman.
No wonder he didn't come to visit. Normally, he would be rushing to see the baby after work. But if there's another woman, he'd go to her instead. It's almost laughable. What was I to him?
No matter how much I thought about it, there were no signs of my husband's infidelity. There were nights he came home late, claiming overtime, but even when I was suffering from morning sickness or struggling with a large belly, he was always kind and caring. Yet, when did all this start? Looking at my child, peacefully breathing in sleep, oblivious to the world's miseries, I thought,
I want to protect this child's happiness.
But what echoed in my ears were the voices of my husband and that woman. Their happy conversation, his pleased voice, and her sultry tone. Conversations that seemed to mock me.
Why did this happen? How could this happen? I just wanted to surprise him by coming home early from the hospital. I wish I never knew. If I hadn't known, things might still be peaceful.
Maybe if I had remained ignorant, his affair would have ended, and he might have come back. Perhaps that would have been happier. But was that really the right thing? Pretending not to know, staying silent, is that happiness? The answer is no. This shouldn't be allowed. Even if I pretended not to see his affair, I would surely suffer, suspecting him every time he came home late or communicated with someone. I could foresee a future of pain, as if my heart was being torn apart. What should I do? I kept asking myself. The outside was gradually getting darker. I couldn't stay in the car crying forever. Not with a newborn baby to care for. Wiping my tears, I drove towards my parents' house. There, my parents were overjoyed at the arrival of their first grandchild and told me to rest. But I couldn't just rest. My husband, Steve, who betrayed me and our child, deserved to be brought down. Only then could I possibly grasp happiness. Inspired by the situation, I came up with a plan. After entrusting my child to my parents, I left their house. Once back at my own home, I waited endlessly for the lights to go out. I planned to make my move once the two of them shifted to the bedroom and turned off its lights. My husband, perhaps in a hurry after being put off earlier in the day, turned off the living room lights surprisingly early and moved to the bedroom. A few minutes after the bedroom lights were also turned off, I, clutching my smartphone, entered the house. Moving quietly, I reached the bedroom door and listened. I could hear my husband and the woman talking, and when their voices stopped, I knew it was time. I checked my phone's screen, burst open the door, and turned on the light. Pointing my phone at them, I took a photo. The two of them, naked in bed, looked at me in shock. The woman clung to my husband in surprise, while my husband, caught off guard, seemed not to recognize who I was. After a moment of stillness, he finally jumped out of bed. I captured his image on my phone and then returned to the living room. I could hear the woman's voice from the bedroom.
What was that? Who the heck? My wife! Why is your wife here? She should still be in the hospital. I don't know. This isn't a joke. We were just photographed like that. It's okay. I'll handle it. It seemed my husband managed to calm her down, and they dressed and came to the living room. I sat on the sofa, arms crossed, waiting for them. Seeing me, my husband's face twisted. When did you get discharged? Today. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't know you were getting out so soon. I just didn't say. Why the heck not? I wanted to surprise you. You've only seen our child once since birth, and you're always too busy to respond to my messages. I thought you'd want to see the baby, so I came back right after getting discharged. Where's the kid? At my parents' house. I'm not going to wander around with a newborn at this hour. So, you came back this afternoon? That's right. I wouldn't be discharged in the middle of the night. I found you having a great time with that woman. You really belittled me, didn't you? Saying I'm not a woman anymore, too focused on the baby to care about you, making you feel lonely. As if having the baby was a bad thing, even though you're the father. You heard all that? Of course I did. I come home to find a strange woman's shoes at the door. At first, I thought maybe she was a sales agent, but all I heard from inside was cozy chit-chat. The one who planned to surprise ended up being the surprised. You should have come in right away. Do you know how much courage it takes to walk into your husband's infidelity? Consider how a wife feels finding out she's been betrayed. But I bounced back pretty quickly, which is quite something, I must say. If it was daytime, this misunderstanding could have been cleared up. Misunderstanding? What kind of misunderstanding? I bet you were cozily sitting on the sofa. Seeing that and being told it's a misunderstanding, I'd only have doubts. Catching you in the act was much more effective. What a woman! Well, compared to a husband who brings a woman home while his wife is in the hospital after childbirth, I think it's not that big a deal. More like, what an asshole. So, who is this lady? Well, I'd like to know her name first. Right, Susan? How did you know that? I heard you during the day saying, Susan is the only one I love. So, I know her as Susan, but whether that's her real name, who knows? It doesn't matter what her name is. Oh, but you know my real name, don't you? You could easily find out from your husband. You have information about me, but I have none about you. That's not fair, is it? My name is Susan Miller. That's my real name. So, Susan Miller. And you two are having an affair, right? That's not true. We're just friends. That's right. We're just friends. Friends who cuddle naked in bed? That's some deep friendship, I remarked sarcastically. That's your misinterpretation. She felt unwell, so I just offered her the bed, he defended.
You shouldn't lend out other people's beds, especially not your wife's bed. And to do so naked.
Don't twist it. We're not in that kind of relationship.
You prefer her over me, don't you? And yet, you still deny the affair at this point. Don't you feel sorry for her? We are really just friends. Oh, how nice. Both of you have your stories straight. But what I saw earlier doesn't exactly scream just friends, does it?
We are friends. What's wrong with taking care of a sick woman?
He seemed not to understand his own position. He kept insisting it was a misunderstanding and that they were just friends, eventually shouting in frustration. It seemed he was determined not to admit to the affair, no matter what.
So, you won't admit it? Fine, I have my plans too.
I said and made a call with a single word, come in. The front door opened, and my husband's parents walked in.
Dad, Mom, why are you here?
I asked your in-laws to wait outside, I explained.
Why?
I figured you'd just start yelling at me alone. It's better to have outsiders present to keep things calm.
But why call my parents? Who else should I call? The police, even though nothing's happened yet? Or our neighbors? That would just be a nuisance. Your parents are the best choice. But still.
Please take a look at this. I then showed my in-laws the photo I had taken on my phone. My mother-in-law turned her eyes away, but my father-in-law looked intently. After all, it was a picture of a naked woman.
Steve. What are you doing? It's not like that, Mom. How can you say it's different? When Sarah told us you were cheating, I thought it was nonsense. But to see it's true. It's not cheating. We're just friends.
Friends?
Can you really accept being told it's not cheating if you were shown a photo like this?
Well, I guess I'd have to.
What nonsense are you spouting? I never thought you could be this foolish.
But it's Sarah's fault.
How is it her fault?
Because she stopped paying attention to me after she got pregnant.
You idiot. She's giving birth to your child, and you're saying such ridiculous things. Don't you realize how much she's been through?
His mother scolded, and Steve shrank back, unable to continue his deceit any longer.
So, who is this woman? How did you meet?
On an app.
App?
A dating app, to be precise.
You were actively looking for someone to cheat with?
Indeed, it was clear. It's one thing if it was a coworker, but to deliberately search for someone on an app indicated a clear intent to cheat. So, when did this start?
Pretty much right after we met.
When did you meet? Well, it's an app, so pretty early on. And you, Susan? You knew he was married? Well. You knew, right? Because he told you I was in the hospital. What a situation. My wife is in the hospital, so now's my chance. I was lonely.
A lonely person who doesn't even visit. How does that make sense? Exactly. If you're lonely, you should visit your child. Unbelievable, especially when the baby was just born.
His mother vented her anger, but Susan seemed indifferent, nonchalantly examining her nails. As if it had nothing to do with her.
Hey! You've been silent like this doesn't concern you. What do you think about all this? Are you seriously into Steve?
I'm indifferent. Why would I get serious with someone I met on an app? He said he was free while his wife was in the hospital, so we just had fun. Who seriously dates a married man?
So you're saying this was all just a game?
That's right. I was invited, so we played around. It's not uncommon.
That's ridiculous.
Could you delete that photo, please? It's an invasion of my privacy.
It's evidence of infidelity. Why would I delete it? If you're worried about privacy, you shouldn't have done this in the first place.
This is why I can't deal with rigid people. No, I'm serious. What? You're married, Steve. Even if you're married, you can still fall in love with someone else. Meeting Susan, I realize this is true love. This is what real love feels like. How foolish can you be? If possible, I'd like to divorce and remarry Susan. Hearing this, Susan seemed unbothered, merely sighing. It appeared that Steve was the only one caught up in his delusions.
Sarah, what will you do? Can you really continue with this foolish son? I have no intention of divorcing. If I divorce, Steve will be the one who ends up happy. I absolutely don't want him to remarry Susan. It's wrong for the one who betrayed to end up happy. But staying in this marriage will only make you unhappy. Look, I have no intention of marrying him. Steve is the one who wants to marry me. I just chose him as a plaything. It's just a fleeting pleasure. In fact, it doesn't have to be Steve. Susan, that's not right. I like the physical chemistry, but I'm not into men who cheat. This situation has turned into such a mess. It's a turn-off. We should just not see each other anymore, right? It's not just about not seeing each other. I'll be demanding alimony from you. Alimony? Why should I pay when I was taking care of your husband while you were away? It's not just about when I was away. Well, it's because you weren't taking care of your husband. That's why I stepped in. Why should I pay alimony for that?
Hearing the word alimony, Susan suddenly became combative.
If Steve hadn't approached me, none of this would have happened. You should be the ones paying alimony. Besides, I wasn't his only affair. What do you mean? Look at this. You can see how many women he's been contacting. It's like he's going down the line. Ah. Why do you have access to my profile?
That was easy. I got your ID and password while you were sleeping. Then it was simple to see how much you've been playing around.
You shouldn't show that.
But it was too late. We had all seen just how many women Steve had been contacting.
What have you been doing, Steve? Have you been doing this since before we were married?
Well, yeah.
All those late nights at work. How much have you been deceiving me? Really, what a son.
Look, that's just how men are. A man without sexual desire is boring. Throughout history, powerful men have had many women. I'm chasing women to become something big.
Enough, you idiot! I never thought you could be this foolish.
If that's how you feel, then let's get divorced. Susan doesn't want to marry me, but I want to play around with more women.
Fine, I'll divorce you. But the child stays with me.
I don't need a child. Can't have fun with one around.
Really, how far can you go?
His parents were dumbfounded, and his father, who had been silent, now yelled in anger. But Steve was defiant, claiming this was his way of life. He was beyond help, a hopeless fool.
Just get out. I don't even want to see your face anymore. Leave now.
No, that's not possible. I have nowhere to go. I need time to prepare if I'm going to leave. Or is it okay if I go back to my parents' house?
Of course not. You fool. Don't even think about coming back here. You're not welcome at home.
See?
Fine. Then I'll leave. I'll send you the divorce papers later.
I said, and then left the house with Steve's parents. The next day, I sent the divorce papers, including a claim for alimony. Steve contacted me soon after. I've filed the divorce papers at the city office.
Oh, really?
So now we're strangers.
Yes, that's right. But why did you send a claim for alimony?
Why? Because your infidelity caused the divorce.
That's a joke. I have no intention of paying that. What? It's my right. I don't care. If I pay that, I won't have money to enjoy myself with women.
What are you talking about?
Just speaking plain English. Can't you understand? If you hadn't cheated, none of this would have happened. So what? If you were entirely blameless, maybe I'd understand, but you're not without fault. What fault? The fault of not paying attention to me.
His selfish reasoning left me speechless. I angrily hung up and immediately went to see a lawyer. Initially, I only intended to claim alimony, but after hearing his absurd argument, I decided to also demand child support. Steve, not expecting me to hire a lawyer, was so surprised that he agreed to pay a lump sum. He left with a parting shot, "I have a job, so money is no problem." But that wasn't the end of Steve's surprises. A month later, he got a shock.
Hey, I got a notice to pay the rent. What's this about?
That's right. Rent is due.
Why am I being charged rent?
Well, that house was originally mine before we got married. I changed the name to yours after we got married.
I didn't know that.
I did tell you. But it seemed like you didn't care much about it. I knew your salary wouldn't cover it even after we got married, so I've been paying the rent all this time. It's a costly place, but you liked it, and I loved that house too, so I thought the high rent was worth it.
How could you afford such high rent?
You know I've been streaming videos, right? I started as a hobby before we were married and it took off. Now I manage about 3 channels.
You were doing that?
Yeah, my cooking videos get a lot of views. Plus, I write a blog too. Thanks to the ad revenue, I make about $100,000 a month. I'm doing really well, so paying that rent was never an issue.
Really? Hey, can we start over? What? Let's get back together. I actually always loved you. I just felt a bit lonely and got distracted by other women.
A bit lonely? I don't think someone who contacted so many women even before our marriage was just a bit lonely. You were always active, but... No, really, you were too active. You're like a bean, how persistent you are. Anyway, you can't afford that rent with your salary, so you'll need to move out.
That's not fair. Living in that house is part of my status.
Status with a low salary? No. I need a big house to attract women. Women don't come to a man with no money. Well, that's true. No money and all brains in the lower half, no one would bother with you.
So, let's start over for my sake.
That makes no sense. It's all for your benefit.
Can't we have that kind of relationship? Absolutely not. Come on, let's start over.
Steve kept calling, saying we should get back together because he was behind on rent or had run out of money. His reasoning was so selfish that I made a video about it and posted it online. The comment section exploded with people amazed at such stupidity, and my channel's subscribers skyrocketed. Thanks to you, Steve. I was initially pleased with the turn of events, but the online community didn't stop there. Intrigued by the entertaining story, they began to investigate who my husband was. In no time, internet detectives had exposed Steve's face in photos. Furthermore, they revealed his personal information, including his home and workplace. I was astonished by the efficiency of their work, rivaling that of the police. However, this led to serious consequences for his company. A boycott movement started, urging people not to buy products from a company that employed someone like him. With such pressure, the company had no choice but to act, and as a result, Steve was fired, blamed for the negative impact on the company.
Help me!
What happened?
I got fired.
That's to be expected.
How did they find out about me?
Internet sleuths are as good as professionals.
I can't believe it led to a boycott and I was blamed for the company's poor performance and got fired. What should I do?
Just get a job. That's all you can do.
But I won't make as much as before.
It's okay. You weren't making much before anyway. It won't be much different.
That's harsh.
But true. You were too busy chasing women. Thanks to that, my channel is doing great.
What do you mean? After using our story, my viewership and income skyrocketed. It's like all the tears I shed over your cheating were a lie.
So, I helped you make more money? That's one way to put it. Then I'll keep giving you material. If I cheat and you make videos about it, it's a win-win. Unfortunately, repeating the same story gets boring. I'm focusing on child-related content now, so don't worry.
Hey! What about me?
Go to hell.
Help me!
Steve, having lost his job and income, desperately tried to continue living in the same house by engaging in a rigorous job hunt. However, he lamented that all the offers he received were for less pay than before, and ultimately, he failed to secure a new position. Unable to sustain himself under these circumstances, he moved into a rundown apartment that seemed at least 50 years old. Dissatisfied with this lifestyle, Steve attempted to move in with a woman he met through a dating app, but she refused, not wanting anything to do with a man in such financial straits. He then turned to his parents, hoping for support, but was turned away at the door, paying the price for his foolish actions. Desperate for any kind of employment, Steve faced the challenge of his notoriety. His face was recognized everywhere, making it impossible to keep a job. Eventually, he found work as a night janitor in an office building. Wearing a large mask and working in the dead of night, he led a lonely life, a stark contrast to his previous existence. This was truly a fitting end for a man who had scorned women. As for me, I returned to my parents' home and, with their help, devoted myself to raising my child. I continued to create content around my child, which resulted in an increasing income. I'm even planning to start my own company soon. Thanks to these developments, both my personal and professional lives are thriving. I'm living the happiest days of my life. Am I finally spared from eating your awful cooking today? Should I say thank you? Well, I'm not going to. Enduring John's harsh words, I sent him off with a bigger smile than usual. As soon as he left, I turned around, ready to start my plan. If my guess was right, he'd be home early today. I needed to finish my preparations before then. While working on my preparations, memories of the past weeks came flooding back. I had been investigating John's behavior while managing household chores. What I discovered was, yeah, right. John was having an affair. And the other woman was a 20-year-old college student. I had set numerous traps, and today, I was going to expose them. It's because of my past career that I'm doing this. I, a former private investigator, am going to thoroughly investigate and bring these two to justice. My name is Amelia. I'm a seemingly ordinary housewife. John and I have been married for 10 years. John works hard as an employee at a major corporation, still active and committed. When I first met John, he wasn't as engrossed in his work as he is now. Initially, he viewed work merely as a means to enjoy his personal life, often lacking motivation and frequently talking about quitting. However, this changed after they had been dating for a year. He stopped complaining about work and seemed transformed, which worried me. The reason for this change became clear 6 months later. One relaxing evening while watching TV, John suddenly handed me a ring.
Amelia, I will make you happy. Will you marry me?
Despite the surprise, my answer was a heartfelt yes. Thus, we married, and I became a wife. John wanted me to be a full-time housewife, a role I accepted. I informed my employer, resigned 2 months later, and embraced my new life. Meeting John through a friend and ending up married felt unbelievable. After 10 years together, it was clear that life was unpredictable. We didn't have children, but we were reasonably happy. We're able to live this life thanks to John, who works tirelessly every day. However, a shadow loomed over our seemingly happy life. One morning. As usual, when I went to check the mailbox outside our house, I found a pitch-black envelope inside. It had a sinister aura, completely black. It had nothing written on either the front or the back. Sender unknown. This has never happened before. Despite my apprehension, I opened it to find a single piece of paper. Hesitantly, I took out the paper from the envelope and there, written in big letters in the center, "Get divorced." So, that's it. I realized. The person who put this envelope in my mailbox was likely the same one demanding a divorce. Something was happening behind my back. For now, I decided not to act hastily and waited for John's return in the evening. In the evening, John came home. I'm home. Welcome back. I hate to ask you this right when you get back, but what do you think about this? I showed him the letter. The moment he saw it, he became flustered. A stark contrast to his usual demeanor raised my suspicions. Are you okay? Right after the question, John suddenly got angry and stormed into the bedroom. John emerged from the bedroom dressed as if he was about to go out. "What? You're leaving?" I received no response. He just left the house in silence. His behavior was clearly unusual. I could hear the car engine starting outside. I watched it from the living room window. Where is he going? After confirming that John had driven off, I picked up the paper she had placed nearby. If my intuition was right, this person and my husband were connected. A sense of excitement tinged my thoughts amidst the turmoil of me otherwise ordinary life. 2 hours later, my phone rang with an unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't answer calls from unknown numbers, but this time was different. "Hello?" I answered, and the voice on the other end, seemingly male, spat out hateful words: "Get divorced, leave the house, disappear." The caller had spewed venom in words so simple, even a child would understand. It was clear to me this was not a man's voice. It was immediately clear to me that the caller was a woman. It wasn't just the words, but the voice that was off. She had clearly lowered her pitch to sound like a man. A woman, huh? This confirmed my intuition. John was intimately involved with the person on the phone. But I knew reacting emotionally could make the other woman flee. I decided to play ignorant, to not let on what I knew.
"Who are you? Stop this weird prank, please."
The woman, seemingly pleased with my response, hurled even more abuse at me. It was so intense. Hearing such things would normally be traumatizing.
"Stop it, please."
Enough is enough. I hung up forcefully. However, as intentional as it was, the barrage of insults still affected me. A few days later, John returned from work, and I told him about the harassment from the unknown person. Ever since that creepy letter arrived, I've been getting these weird calls. However, John didn't seem interested in the conversation. So, I decided to shake things up a bit. There was no doubt in my mind that the caller was a woman. I think it was a woman. I described how the woman had altered her voice to sound male, and John briefly showed a look of surprise before quickly regaining his composure. Then, unexpectedly, he began to berate me.
"You've been so noisy lately. What does it matter if the caller is a woman or a man? You can't tell someone's gender just by their voice. You always do this, jumping to conclusions based on your assumptions. Have you ever been right? You act as if you're always correct. Do you enjoy belittling me that much?"
I didn't say that. Or is there something on your mind? I calmly questioned him. Overexcited, John seemed out of breath and unable to respond. "Are you okay?" Just then, I noticed his work bag vibrating. His phone was ringing. "Your phone's ringing, you know?" He hastily grabbed his phone and hurried outside. About 30 minutes later, John returned, quickly changed clothes, and left again without a word, just like before. I watched him leave from the window. I smirked through the window. Shortly after, her own phone rang. It was the same person again. Again? The caller had again altered her voice to sound lower. "Enough is enough. You're a woman, aren't you? It's obvious you're disguising your voice. There's no point in continuing." As I confronted her, a different voice came through the phone. When I confronted her about the uselessness of her actions, a different voice responded. It was the woman's real voice, one I hadn't heard before. "So you knew. Why didn't you say so from the start?" Her voice was younger than I had imagined. It was probably in her 20s. "What a lovely voice you have. Should I call you miss?" "Huh? I don't care about compliments from an old lady like you. Besides, of course, I'm cute. If you have time for this, you should try being more attractive yourself. Not that it would do any good for an old lady like you. That's why you're in this mess. Oh, and my name is Luna, so don't call me miss, okay, you old hag?" It's absurd and infuriating to be verbally abused by a woman I've never even met. It's becoming increasingly difficult to restrain my emotions and not respond in kind. But I had to be patient. After getting what she wanted, Luna ended the call triumphantly. They must be together. talking to Luna made one thing clear. John was with her. It was undeniable. As if to prove it, that day, John returned home just before his usual departure time for work. So I pretended to be asleep. I heard the front door close with a click. I quickly got up, confirmed that John had left for work, and began preparing to leave for a specific location. Never thought this would happen to me. I left the house with mixed feelings. 3 weeks had passed since then. So much had happened to lead up to this moment. Luna's abusive calls continued. And John treated me like she was invisible, as if I didn't exist in the house. There was no place for me in this house anymore. But for me, those things no longer mattered. Because today was a very important day in her life. That morning, unlike other days, she had something different planned as she prepared to send John off to work. I'm going out with friends, so for dinner, grab some takeout or ready-made meals. Saying just this should be enough. Usually, John would ignore me, but he reacted when I mentioned going out. So, I don't have to eat your terrible cooking today? Should I say thank you? Nah, I won't. Despite his rudeness, I sent him off with a bigger smile than usual. Then, as soon as he was gone, I turned and began my plan. If my guess was right, he'd be home early today. I had to finish my preparations by then. While preparing, I thought about everything that had happened in the past weeks. I had been investigating John's behavior while managing the household chores for 3 weeks. What I found out was... Yes, I see. John was having an affair. And the other woman was a 20-year-old college student. I had set numerous traps, and today, I was going to expose them. It's because of my past career that I'm doing this. I, a former detective, am going to thoroughly investigate and bring these two to justice. Here it is. Around lunchtime, just as I predicted, John came back. He stepped out of the car, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him, thinking I wasn't home. Then, following him, a young woman got out of the car. It was Luna. He finally brought her home. As soon as they entered the house, John and Luna headed straight to the bedroom and collapsed onto the bed. But what they didn't know was that I had set up a special item in the bedroom. It was a voice-activated security camera I had secretly bought for when we had a child. This camera could capture both video and audio perfectly. They really don't know anything. I thought, watching from the car. I watched their repulsive actions for about 2 hours. The moment I had been waiting for finally arrived. As they got out of bed, naked, to take a shower, I made my presence known.
Caught you cheating?
Ah. Whoa. Startled, they looked around in shock. Enjoy yourselves? I've been watching your affair on this security camera. This is a security camera? Why does it have audio? It's not just any camera, it's a voice-activated one. I didn't buy it for this purpose, but it sure came in handy. I'm on my way there now, so wait for me. And don't bother trying to escape. I went straight to the bedroom, where they had already dressed. They tried to act as if nothing had happened. You know I saw everything. It's my first time seeing such a clear case of cheating. Do you have proof? Just watching doesn't count.
Yeah, show us the proof. If you're so sure, then prove it, old lady.
Even at this point, they were still defiant. I was speechless at their audacity. You're really foolish, you know. Did you think this was all the preparation I had done? I said, pulling out a small surveillance camera from the tissue box on the bed. What? I continued, pulling out more cameras from the ceiling and closet. Placing several surveillance cameras in front of them, they were lost for words. The price for ruining my life isn't as simple as this. I said, delivering the final blow. I had thought that would be it, but they still tried to act tough. No more words would change the situation. So, I decided to meticulously explain how I uncovered their affair, rendering them unable to counter. Luna had acted on her own, without saying anything to John to push for a divorce. From the moment I received the first get divorced letter, I had suspected my husband's infidelity. It suggested the other person was likely a woman. Then there was John's reaction when I showed him the letter. His immediate departure was like an admission of guilt. And about that phone call. You thought you were clever, changing your voice to sound like a man, but I could tell it was a woman right away. That kind of voice disguise doesn't fool me. The more you kept doing the same thing every day, the more obvious it became. And John's behavior was the same. It was just like a child who's been scolded. You both thought I hadn't noticed your affair, but that's not the case. I've been discreetly taking action to gather evidence of your infidelity, while I was enduring the harassment from both of you. So, you see? Do you understand what I've been through? John stood agape, utterly dumbfounded. But Luna, ever the bold one, retorted, "What's your deal?" Luna is such a bold woman. In a way, I'm almost impressed by her youthfulness. What do you mean, what's my deal? Just putting my past experience to use. Past experience? What are you, an old lady? Luna clearly didn't understand. I handed her an old business card from my wallet as a memento. What's this? Ron Detective Agency? Representative, Amelia? What? Oh, I guess I never mentioned it. I used to be a private investigator. Both Luna and John were shocked to learn about my past as a detective. It was no surprise to Luna, but John had no way of knowing. I had quit being an investigator before I met him. There's no special reason for quitting. I just wanted a normal job. But, you know, old habits die hard. I can't help but be suspicious and investigate even the smallest things. That's how I quickly uncovered John and Luna's affair. They were both stunned by my story. Sorry to surprise you, but this isn't over yet. I took out my phone and called someone. Just wait a moment. I'll make it loud enough for everyone to hear. I switched my phone settings to speaker mode. The voices of John's parents came through the phone. You're the loser. To think that our son could do something like this, it just breaks our hearts.
What are you thinking? Betraying someone important to you, it's just wrong on a human level.
John probably never imagined I was in touch with his parents. He seemed completely unable to grasp what was happening to him. Surprised? This is the best surprise I could give you. How did John's parents know about his affair? Simple. I had told them beforehand. But merely saying he's having an affair wouldn't convince anyone. Especially when it's about their own son. No one would easily believe that their own son is cheating, and it's hard to even consider the possibility. That's why I didn't say anything until I had concrete evidence of John's infidelity. The moment would come soon. My intuition as a former detective told me that. And then it did. I captured John happily walking arm in arm with Luna into a hotel, snapping the decisive moment of infidelity with my camera. I also captured them leaving the hotel and on another day. I snapped the decisive moment of infidelity with my camera. On another day, I got a photo of them embracing and kissing. With this much proof, his parents couldn't doubt the truth. Finally realizing the severity of the situation, John panicked and shouted into the phone, "It's a misunderstanding. I haven't done anything." But his pleas fell on deaf ears, as his parents, having seen undeniable proof, told him, "We want nothing to do with you. We're cutting ties with you today." I seized the moment and pulled out a divorce paper from my bag, thrusting it at John. "I can't be with you after this. We're getting a divorce." However, John vehemently opposed the divorce, trying to hand the paper back to me.
I won't divorce you. Never. What? I was planning to be with John. Stay out of this. You're an outsider. Outsider?
I wasn't about to let her disrupt this moment. This was between John and me. If that's your choice, fine. But in return, expect a court case. You do realize what that means, right? At the mention of court, John's resolve crumbled, and he began to sweat profusely. I had already hired a lawyer, preparing for this day. I had already discussed with my lawyer that if John refused to divorce, we would proceed with a lawsuit. Hearing court, John stopped resisting and immediately signed the divorce papers. Luna saw John's pathetic state.
Why aren't you fighting back? I'm happy about the divorce, but it's pathetic how you're just doing what she says.
She lashed out unilaterally. And then she turned her anger towards me, hurling words of rage. But I was ready for her reaction too. It was now time to bring down this cheating woman. I spoke towards the voice-activated security camera. You can come in now, thank you. A woman's voice replied from the camera, understood.
Hey, old lady. What did you just do?
Luna demanded, but I ignored her. She continued to rant, but I paid her no mind. Soon, a couple who appeared to be married entered the bedroom. Luna was left speechless at the sight. These are the special guests I prepared for you. Happy, aren't you? The mysterious couple who suddenly appeared were, in fact, Luna's parents. I asked your parents to come here because I wanted them to see firsthand how their daughter was having an affair with my husband, well, now my ex-husband. I wanted them to be part of this discussion, and then they came. Luna was too shocked to speak, her mouth agape at the sudden appearance of her parents.
I'm so sorry. We never imagined our daughter could be so foolish. We're ashamed as parents. Sorry. We spoiled her too much, being our only child. We're truly sorry.
Luna's parents apologized sincerely.
It's not your fault.
I don't know what to say. It's understandable. No parent would believe their child could do such a thing without seeing the evidence themselves. That's why I wanted you here today, to see the truth with your own eyes. That's true. Luna's parents turned towards her, their faces filled with anger, and directed harsh words at her. Destroying someone else's family for your own pleasure is outrageous. We raised you with so much love and care, and this is how you repay us. We are thoroughly disappointed in you, Luna. We no longer consider you our daughter. As of today, we're cutting ties with you. This decision was made after a thorough discussion with your mother. It's regrettable, but that's how it is. You're no longer welcome in our home. If you understand, leave now. We don't want to see your face again.
Dad, Mom, you're not serious, right? You wouldn't abandon me? Hey, Mom. Hey.
Everything your father said is true. Whatever you say won't change our minds. Blame your past self for this. You brought this on yourself.
Don't believe this nonsense. I didn't do anything.
Despite her protests, her parents couldn't believe her, especially after witnessing their daughter in a compromising situation with a stranger. Realizing her words were futile, Luna looked down in defeat. Then, Luna's father turned towards John and delivered a stern rebuke. It's shameful for an adult to be infatuated with a woman over 20 years younger. You lack the maturity expected of an adult, as does our daughter. John stood there, speechless with her father's words.
I'm sorry for involving you in this mess. No, it's us who should apologize for our foolish daughter's actions. We are truly sorry.
Suddenly, Luna, who had been silent, snapped and lunged at her parents in rage. At that moment,
watch out!
I quickly stepped in front of her parents. I grabbed Luna's arm as she came charging at us and swiftly executed a shoulder throw. Luna's body flew through the air before crashing forcefully onto the floor. She let out a cry that was hard to imagine coming from her delicate appearance, and then she burst into tears from the intense pain. Let this be a lesson. Don't get too cocky. I had learned self-defense and martial arts when I decided to become an investigator. I never imagined it would come in handy in a situation like this. After the commotion settled down, I immediately filed the divorce papers, and my marriage to John was officially over. He soon gathered his belongings and left the house. I heard from acquaintances that both John and Luna were facing tough times. John was faced with the prospect of paying me a large amount of alimony, but his affair became known at his company, leading to him being viewed with disdain by those around him. Unable to endure the situation, John quickly submitted his resignation and left his job. Now, he's struggling with a low-income life, working day and night to pay the alimony. As for Luna, she was disowned by her parents and kicked out of their home. With nowhere to go, she's barely getting by with unfamiliar jobs. Meanwhile, Luna faced a harsher reality. Her affair with John spread among her friends, leaving her isolated and alone. She now leads a lonely life, unsupported by anyone. As for me, I sold the house after the divorce. I didn't want to live there anymore. With the money from the sale, I'm now enjoying life, doing things I've always wanted to do. Of course, I am doing this all on my own.
But I'm happier than ever. Life is more enjoyable now than when I was married.
My mother-in-law, who was fine until yesterday, has passed away. It was all so sudden. She was a kind person to me, a bit playful and adorable, far from the stereotypical mother-in-law from hell often depicted in YouTube videos. Mom, why did you have to go so suddenly? I mourn her as if she were my own mother. However, despite it being during the funeral, a rough voice could be heard coming from beside me.
It's my right to get a share, isn't it? What? You're challenging me, the eldest son?
My mother-in-law had 4 sons, including my husband Scott. None of them seemed to mourn her. They were all seriously discussing the inheritance at the funeral. I just wanted them to send her off with warmth and respect, but when I spoke up, I got rebuked. You're after the inheritance too, aren't you?
Can't you see we're discussing something important? Outsiders like you should stay out of this.
It was shocking. Perhaps he spoke out of anger, but still, to be spoken to in such a way by my husband. While feeling suspicious of them, I hastily sent off my mother-in-law. And then, 7 days later, after the inheritance was divided, my husband and his brothers, having lost interest, stopped visiting their family home altogether. In their place, I went to put flowers, cleaned the neglected house, and took care of the beloved dog that my mother-in-law had cherished. While cleaning the doghouse, I heard a rustling sound coming from the back. Becoming suspicious, I pulled it out, and something appeared that shouldn't have been there. My name is Kelly. I'm a working wife, juggling a career and household responsibilities. People say I'm a bit unique because I'm a magician. Ever since I was taken to a magic show as a child, I've been enchanted by the joy and surprise that magic brings to people. I was lucky enough to learn from the magician I admired. I believe I was able to bring smiles to various people, including my parents, by learning and practicing various things from my mentor, including the mindset towards skills and professions. Magic is my pride. Virgil and I got close through a magic event company and got married. At first, my husband used to compliment my magic tricks, saying things like, "You have amazing talent," and "It's your true calling." But gradually, he started making disparaging remarks about my work, saying things like, "It's low-paying, and anyone can do it." Despite both of us working, I'm left to handle almost all the household chores. The relationship with my husband started to get a bit rocky. Where had the kind man who delighted in even my simplest magic tricks gone since our honeymoon days? Despite Virgil's demeaning comments about my profession as a magician, his mother, my mother-in-law, always praised my magic, which was a great comfort. I never met my father-in-law, as he passed away from illness a few years ago, but my mother-in-law had been incredibly warm and kind since I first met her for our introduction. She always looked out for me and had kind words to share. She would beam with joy more than anyone else when I performed magic tricks. Since the moment I met her, I've adored her and often visited her home even after getting married. She had a big family, with 4 sons including Virgil and 10 grandchildren. She lived with the eldest son's family. They once welcomed a cute, large breed puppy, but as the dog grew, they started neglecting it, except for my mother-in-law, who took great care of it. Whenever I visited, I would help with brushing and walking the dog, and it eventually grew fond of me. I've always loved animals. Especially loved dogs, and now it warmly welcomes me every time I visit, which I find incredibly adorable. I used to have great chats with my mother-in-law about the dog, but the eldest son's wife once told me not to come over so often as it was a nuisance. I realized that frequent visits from an outsider could be bothersome and decided to refrain from visiting for a while. Although this distanced me from my mother-in-law for some time, after having 2 children, our interaction resumed, albeit not as frequently as before. Are you heading out? Yeah, didn't I tell you? I'm busy with work since I got promoted. Are you going to your mom's place again? Must be nice to be free like that. Okay, have a good day. His sharp tone made me want to argue, but I held back my words. Virgil was often away due to work, and we rarely visited his mother's house together. One day, my mother-in-law invited me over, saying she bought some snacks. Your birthday is coming up soon, isn't it? What would you like this year? I appreciate it every year, but now that I'm turning 60, I don't really crave material things anymore.
Wait, you're turning 60?
Hey, don't say it so loudly. I mean, I already have lots of grandchildren, so I guess I'm a respectable grandma now, huh?
Let's celebrate. I'll organize it. I'm sure everyone will want to make it a big celebration. Oh, really? Do you think so?
My mother-in-law was hesitant, but she seemed somewhat bashful about it. After returning home, I immediately called my husband's brothers. But none of them or their wives seemed enthusiastic about it. Even my husband was indifferent. What's that about? I'm busy, you know. It's just a birthday party, right? You started this, so you handle the preparations. He said coldly, leaving me feeling downhearted. Somehow, though they wouldn't help with the preparations, Virgil's brothers and their families agreed to attend the party. I didn't want to disappoint my mother-in-law, so I put my all into getting everything ready for the big day.
All right, it's perfect.
While my mother-in-law, whom I had sent to a nearby cafe with some money, was away, I decorated the house and prepared the feast. As Virgil's brothers and their families arrived, not one of them brought a gift or even thanked me. My husband was no different. I didn't expect thanks for organizing something I took upon myself, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of being unappreciated. Even before my mother-in-law returned, they started to dig into the food and drinks, and I had to stop them just in time.
Oh my, everyone came to celebrate?
She was delighted to see her sons and grandchildren all gathered. She laughed heartily at the new magic trick I performed with the kids.
Thanks to Kelly for organizing today's party,
she said with a smile as we washed the dishes together. After the party, when everyone left without helping clean up, and the eldest son's family retreated to their rooms, I felt a bit miffed. But seeing my mother-in-law happy made it all seem worthwhile.
See you later, Kelly.
She waved goodbye with a smile as I left late in the night. Little did I know, that would be our last exchange. When I got home, I found a letter in the mailbox. The contents made me feel a bit exasperated that nobody had bothered to send anything for my mother-in-law's birthday. The next day, while my kids were at daycare, I decided to return the containers I had used to bring home leftovers from the party. I felt an odd sense of urgency that morning. No one answered the doorbell. It seemed like the house was empty. As I was about to leave, I heard the dog barking in the yard. What happened? I found the dog's chain tangled around it. After freeing the dog from its collar, it dashed straight to the window of the veranda. Through the window, I saw my mother-in-law lying on the floor in the living room.
Mom!
In a panic, I rushed around to the front door, which was thankfully unlocked, and hurried into the living room. My mother-in-law's beloved dog was desperately barking next to her, lying motionless as if crying for help. I immediately called an ambulance, but it was too late. My mother-in-law, who had been healthy just the day before, had passed away from a stroke. My heart was filled with a sense of loss, but there was no time to grieve as I hurriedly contacted family members. Soon, the funeral came. My mother-in-law, who had 4 sons, was not mourned by any of them. Throughout the funeral, they only seemed seriously interested in discussing the inheritance. Despite my suspicions about them, I placed a photo from the recent 60th birthday party inside her coffin and hurriedly sent her off. I expressed my desire to put flowers in the vase next to my mother-in-law's photo, and the eldest son's family begrudgingly let me into the house. I invited Virgil, but he just said, "I'm busy," and couldn't join. From the balcony, I could hear the dog whimpering sadly, whine. The eldest son's family didn't want to care for the dog, so I negotiated to look after it in the mornings and evenings, fitting it in between childcare and work. In a little while, I'll negotiate to take the dog home with me. I thought to myself. Today, with some extra time, I was cleaning the neglected doghouse and discovered something stuck to the ceiling inside. It was hidden from outside view. Curious, I peeled it off. Perhaps to protect it from getting wet, a fancy envelope in a plastic bag. Inside, a note in a pop font read, "A gift for the person taking care of the dog." Open the trick box. Another paper included a map with "Here's where the trick box is" written on it. It seemed like a joke meant for kids. Although I could have ignored it, something made me curious. The usually calm dog barked excitedly, as if encouraging me to look. Following the map, I started digging in the indicated spot. Could there actually be treasure buried here? As I was lost in thought, digging, the dog joined in to help. Soon, a trick box emerged from the ground. It seemed like a child's toy, but was quite tricky to open. Thanks to my experience with sleight of hand and magic, I struggled but eventually managed to open it. Inside, there was a letter addressed to Kelly and a small key. The letter explained that the previous note was made to look like a joke so that my money-minded children wouldn't take it seriously. The note stated that the hidden location of the safe, which contained items not to be found, was written down. Apparently she had been planning and preparing for quite some time before she passed away. Furthermore, the letter revealed that her eldest son and his wife, along with Scott and his other brothers, had been borrowing money from her, leaving no inheritance in the house. She wanted to leave something for me, who had been kind to her, and instructed me to pretend I didn't find anything and accept this gift. Following the map, I found the safe and opened it with the key from the trick box. Inside were several pieces of jewelry, including diamond rings and necklaces. I didn't know the value of these sparkling diamonds, but I was touched that my mother-in-law had left something for me. However, I couldn't help but cry, thinking of all the things I still wanted to do with and for her, now that she was no longer in this world. I decided to honor her last wish and keep this discovery a secret from Virgil and his brothers. Then, my phone rang. It was Virgil. Hello? Hey, you need to be there for the inheritance discussion. It's the day after tomorrow. Bye. Hey, wait. He said abruptly, and the call ended. After that, he didn't come home, and I reluctantly went to the meeting. There, all of his brothers and their wives were present. Seeing the bank books and metal items on the table, everyone sighed in disappointment. The eldest son, Scott, incurred huge losses in the stock market. The second son, John, spent a fortune on extravagant affairs, and on top of that, my husband Virgil loudly complained in front of everyone, "I'm struggling because my allowance is too small." The wives of each brother all looked at me at once, but this was the first time I had heard such a claim from my husband. "No, you spend most of your earnings yourself, ouch." I began to retort, but was interrupted by a sharp pain. Virgil had pinched me hard on the back. Feigning ignorance, he continued to lament about being broke. "Anyway, I have no money." Despite the pain, I couldn't help but think something was off. Afterwards, the second son, John, who had started a business, was struggling with debts, and the fourth son, Gordon, had a hobby of collecting cars and apparently needed money for that. It turned out that everyone, each for their own self-made reasons, was short of cash. They had all begged my mother-in-law for money during her lifetime, leaving no substantial savings to be called an inheritance. This revelation led to an ugly exchange of insults and blame that was too harsh to be made public. It was a good thing I had left my children with my parents. Had they been there, I would have deeply regretted it. The brothers shouted at each other, and their wives did nothing to stop them, instead joining in. My attempts to calm everyone down were ignored. Afterward, someone suggested, "We have no choice but to sell the family home," but everyone agreed, "Even if we sell it, it won't bring in much money. She was a useless old woman. What does she think we lived together and took care of her for? At least do something useful for your children in the end." I couldn't take it anymore. I slammed my hands down on the table. Everyone was shocked, and the room fell into complete silence.
What are all of you saying? It's shameful. Talking about money like this. How can you speak ill of such a kind woman? It's terrible. Don't you have any heart?
Everyone was stunned by my outburst, but my husband grabbed my shoulder tightly.
Hey, you're not involved in this. Don't butt in. If you're gonna keep yelling, just go home,
he said angrily. But I stood my ground and shook off his grip. Fine, I will go home. And while I'm at it, I'll leave a divorce paper and leave for good. He looked baffled, not understanding what I was saying. What? Are you serious? Don't make a scene here.
Do I look like I'm lying? I'm serious.
My decision to divorce wasn't spontaneous. I had been contemplating it for a while. And recent events solidified my resolve. I looked at my husband with an unwavering resolve. My husband realized I was serious. Why, what happened? Is it because your beloved mother-in-law is gone? It's not just that. We can't settle this here. Let's go home. That day, the meeting ended abruptly, and Scott and I returned home. Back at home, just the two of us, a heavy silence filled the room. Sitting across the dining table, Virgil looked utterly confused and defensive. He took out a beer from the fridge for himself, popped the tab open, and began to drink. Sensing unpredictability from him, I discreetly switched on the voice recorder I had hidden in my pocket earlier. It might come in handy later. So? Why did you say you want a divorce? Have you lost your mind? I haven't lost my mind. I told you, I'm serious. You know the reason better than anyone, don't you? Huh? I hate it when you beat around the bush. Just tell me the reason, straight up. He slammed his half-finished beer can on the table. Unfazed, I calmly responded. I got a call. From a woman saying she wants to marry you and for me to leave you. His face changed in an instant. Someone you're getting along with? Her, right? Yes. Your mistress. She's very young, isn't she? I was surprised. Her syrupy, immature voice had called my cell phone. The news was a shock, but it also made sense. He had become distant after we got married because he had a mistress. Without me asking, she gushed about their romantic escapades. Day trips, stays in hotel suites. I couldn't help but question her nerve for telling all this to his wife. However, as she spoke, I decided to gather evidence of the affair. I started recording midway through the conversation. Furthermore, by expressing envy like, I've never stayed in such a hotel, I'm jealous. I'd love to see it, and flattering the mistress, who was reveling in her superiority, she surprisingly ended up sending me photos taken with my husband in a suite room, photos that showed a lot of skin, even going to the extent of mailing them to me. Though I was filled with disgust and anger, I was glad to have solid evidence. She called a few more times, happily telling me how my husband spent most of his weekends at her place, paid her rent, and showered her with expensive gifts. Things he never did for me and our children. So much for his complaints about having too little pocket money. His busy work excuse was mostly a lie. His late returns from work and weekend duties were all excuses to spend time with his mistress. Pretending to be oblivious, I once called his office on a day he claimed to be working overtime. Of course, he wasn't working, and there was no promotion. In fact, he had been absent without leave, causing trouble at work.
You neglect your duties, drown in a woman's arms. What are you doing?
It's pathetic.
You called my office? That's a violation of my privacy.
My husband, with his face turning bright red and spitting in anger as he shouted, was quite an unsightly sight. Don't be ridiculous. If necessary, I'll have your office testify. You could even be sued by them for your unauthorized absences.
What? And with no raise, how can you afford to pay your mistress's rent and lavish her with brand gifts? Did you use the money you begged from your mother for your affair? Damn it, I don't want to be lectured about how I use my money by a stranger like you. Fine, let's get divorced. I'll marry that young, cute, and kind girl. I'm sick of you, a charmless nag with kids. It'll be refreshing to be rid of this burden.
He was infuriated, but I calmly presented the divorce papers I had previously obtained.
I've filled in my part. Will you sign?
Sure. He furiously wrote his name and stamped it. I'll file this. I'll contact you later about alimony and child support.
Get out, get out.
I carefully put the divorce papers in my bag, left the house without looking back at Scott, and headed to my parents' house. At my parents', they warmly welcomed us. The kids were happy to live with their grandparents, and our lives were filled with more laughter and joy than before. I devoted myself more to my work. One day, while everyone was out and I was alone. After finishing chores, I was relaxing on the sofa watching recorded TV shows when the doorbell rang. Without checking properly, I casually opened the door, hi, and it was Virgil. I realized my carelessness too late, the damage was already done. I saw his menacing face as he blocked the door with his foot. It's been a while, he said, looking down at me. What do you want? Receipts for jewelry purchases made by Mom surfaced. What? The jewelry found at the family home was all fake or cheap. I think you might have the real stuff. Huh? I haven't received any expensive jewelry like that. Really? Maybe you sweet-talked my mom into buying them for you.
I would never do that. I'm not like your mistress or your brothers.
Really? Then show me around the house.
What? I told you I don't have it. Hey, wait a minute.
Ignoring my protest, he barged into the house. Stop. I rushed to stop him, but he pushed past me and started rummaging through drawers and shelves. He must have been looking for the jewelry my mother-in-law left after her death, hidden in the trick box.
Oh, this must be it.
He found an ornate jewelry box and his eyes sparkled with greed. That is. As he opened the box, boink. Whoa. From inside, a realistic toy snake sprang out forcefully. It was something I made for a magic trick. It was too realistic and unpopular among audiences, so it was never used. Scott recoiled in surprise at the toy snake, and I had to suppress a laugh at his foolish appearance. What the hell is this, Kelly? Are you making fun of me? Of course not. You're the one who opened it. Damn it, you're playing games with me. The item Scott was searching for was now safely stored inside the trick box in the safe. He continued his search. And eventually found the trick box. What's this, a toy? However, he quickly lost interest and started looking elsewhere. I breathed a sigh of relief that he didn't find it.
Where is it?
He yelled in frustration. Just then, a stern voice cut through the tension. What are you doing here? It was my father. Surveying the chaos in the house, my father, who practiced martial arts and was quite intimidating, angrily said, "What's with this mess? This is breaking and entering." Virgil, who had always been intimidated by my father, hastily stammered an apology and fled like a flash of light, "Sorry." After explaining the situation and apologizing to my father, he was more concerned about my well-being, asking, "Are you okay? Did he do anything to you?" Later, when my mother returned, the three of us cleaned up the room and went to pick up the kids. I later heard from my lawyer about Virgil and his family's current situation. The brothers had searched everywhere for the expensive jewelry they believed my mother-in-law had bought, but of course, found nothing. He still suspected I had it and even mentioned it to the lawyer during a visit, but the lawyer firmly stated it wasn't with her, and Scott seemed to finally accept it. He had lied a pay raise, and spent most of his time at his mistress's place. His work attitude worsened, his performance dropped, leading to a demotion. Frustrated, he quit his job amid a recession. Unable to afford his mistress's rent and gifts, he became completely dependent on her, and she eventually grew tired of him. The end of the money marked the end of their relationship. Despite her earlier boasts about their love, she had no intention of supporting Virgil indefinitely. I'm also suing the mistress for damages, as there's ample evidence against her. There's an abundance of evidence, so there's no way they can talk their way out of it. Virgil's brothers, who had relied entirely on my mother-in-law, were now constantly complaining and fighting over the inheritance. It seems that my lawyer has also been receiving inquiries about divorce from my husband's other brothers. The lawyer, due to professional ethics, has no intention of taking their cases, but it seems that several of the other brothers are likely to get divorced soon. Following my parents' advice, I had the jewelry from my mother-in-law appraised. The largest diamond ring turned out to be worth around $50,000. Surprised, I decided to heed my parents' advice to use it wisely. I plan to give some of it to my children and the many innocent grandchildren of my mother-in-law when they are older. I believe she would be happy with that decision. As for me, I have a dream. Once my children are older, I want to tour the country and delight more people with the magic that my mother-in-law loved so much. I hope she watches from heaven. And if she could watch my magic tricks from up in the sky and smile, that would make me very happy. And then came a joyful bark from my family, all animal lovers. After leaving the house, I was always worried about my mother-in-law's dog, which I had left behind. Although it was wrong, I secretly visited and took care of the dog while the eldest son's family was away. The dog, nearly neglected, was overjoyed to see me. My lawyer managed to negotiate with the eldest son's family, and surprisingly, they agreed to give the dog to me unconditionally. They no longer had the means to care for it. I thought they might demand money for the dog, so I prepared some just in case. However, it seemed that the eldest son's family no longer had the capacity to even care for the dog. Today, I officially welcomed my mother-in-law's dog as our family pet. The children were ecstatic, petting the dog, which rolled on its back, wagging its tail as if it would fall off. I silently vowed to my late mother-in-law I would take care of the dog until its end. Looking up at the sky. It is cloudless, expansive blue sky. Today was a perfect day for a walk.